If you want to find out what transition is, don't just talk to me, go and talk to everybody. I mean, everybody's, open to talk to you about it. That's how I really found out about transition, talking to people.
Transition is really a very simple and old answer to an ongoing question. The question is, how can we best live in a way that is sustainable?
It's a community-led response to some of the greatest challenges of our time: climate change, fossil fuel depletion, and even the economic crisis.
It's another way to organise society and production and consumption and dealing with waste.
We're going to have to change just about every aspect of life, just about every system that we depend on for our lives, for everything from food to clothing to transport, just about everything. We're going to have to change every single system radically in a very short period of time.
Because there's peak oil involved with transition, in which the peak of humanity will not be able to produce any more oil to power electricity and different things that we take for granted every day.
So one of the things people say is, we're waiting for the government to fix it. And there's a fundamental misunderstanding. The government could not fix our problems, because to fix our problems we need local knowledge. Each place needs to design its pathway to the future, because each place knows the soil, knows the people, knows the community, what skills it's got. And that, for me, is the beauty of the transition model is, we start local, but if it's happening locally everywhere, actually we might stand a chance of really changing the way that we live on a huge scale.
And it's the proposition that if we create a design process to design our way from where we are now to a sustainable future, that we could create something not just as good as we have now, but probably even better.
It gets away from the two things that everyone's recommended to do, which are individual actions, changing light bulbs, driving smaller cars, and campaigning. And both of those can feel quite depressing, because individual actions can feel too small and insignificant. Campaigning can just feel like you're going to be ignored and nobody's paying attention. Whereas transition has this wonderful third option of getting involved with your community and actually doing things together, not asking anybody's permission, but working in a group that's larger than you yourself, which somehow works for people on the human scale. It somehow brings people out of themselves and reassures us on some deep level, I think.
What is the problem? What can I do about it? And what can my community do about it? And it's very much community-led, and it's driven by people's energies. There are no fixed rules. It's not about you have to do this and you have to be for or against that. Where's my energy? Where's it going? And how can I engage my community? It's very positive.
What's powerful about transition is that it's designed to have lots and lots of hooks, lots of different ways in all over it as a model. So if you're not interested in peak oil or climate change, but you love art, then there's a group within the Transition Initiative which is looking at art. If you're really into food, then there's the Transition Food Group, who are doing all kinds of interesting, innovative, creative, playful things around food based on that kind of awareness. So what we see around the country is, there are those people who go, peak oil, climate change, we better do something. But then there's lots of other people who don't have that process, but who get involved in the Transition Food Group because it's fun. And because they do great events, and because it's great sense of community and sociability.
All of us want to be happy. And I think if you went around asking most people whether they were truly happy with their lives, I think you might get a few, but I think a lot of people in our society find aspects of it quite difficult. And I would never be promising that transition is going to give them all the answers, but I think it'll give most people a real sense of community, a sense of empowerment around their lives, and a sense of positivity around being able to do something and to create their own future, rather than being simply someone who's at the mercy of forces outside of them.
Quite often, a lot of what people focus on in the early stages is food. How do we start to create more of our own food locally and not depend on enormous long multinational supply chains? So, for example, there have been community-supported agriculture schemes where people contract directly with farmers who grow food that the people want. in their community. There have been community allotments, places where people can actually get together to grow the food themselves. There have been garden share schemes where people use other people's gardens to grow food and share it. But that's just around food. There are initiatives around transport, such as car clubs, and enabling people to cycle more easily and safely. There have been initiatives around energy, getting local energy supply companies owned by the community to supply renewable energy. There are particularly some interesting initiatives around money, setting up complementary currencies like the Totnes pound and the Lewis pound, to say that money is a very important grid, just like there's a food grid and a power grid. There's a money grid, and if we are dependent on what happens in New York for our money and our money supply, then we are not resilient. So we need to bring as much as we can back to ourselves and to be able to control it ourselves, and more importantly, take responsibility for it ourselves.
An energy descent plan is the 12th of the 12 steps of transition, and it's in effect it's a plan B for the community. So it's saying that when the local authorities sit down and plan for that area, they still sit down and assume a graph that rises from left to right. So in 20 years' time, there'll be more money, more jobs, more energy, more cars, more houses, more economic growth. All the lines go up like that, which means that you're designing is a complete waste of time. It's ridiculous, you know. It's a complete fantasy, and it's a complete waste of everybody's time, and it's deeply irresponsible. Whereas what an EDAP does is says, well, what happens if actually the trend is like this, which is far more likely? How can we design so that that becomes a positive step forward for the community? So it's designed to be a plan that the community take ownership of, and as much as anything, it's a story. It's a narrative. It's not going to happen at the community pick it up in 2009 and then religiously work their way through the whole thing until 2020 and then they've done it. But it is one way that it could happen.
It's a huge turning on its head of the existing power structures and of our relationship to the earth and to the land and the other creatures that we share this planet with.
Reconnecting to each other, reconnecting to the land, to the place, and reconnecting to ourselves.
Now is the time that we have to do this. We can't wait for 10 or 20 or 50 years. We have to do it now. So transition is about doing something very basic about our lives very, very quickly.
There's lots of people involved with the transition, and it's a very big thing.